Thank you very much. Mr. Ilham Hussain, welcome to the Multicultural Conclave 2022. And if you're ready, then I would request you to begin your presentation. You have 10 minutes. And for everyone here in this room, along with the participants, I would like to mention that if you have any questions, please wait until all of the presenters finish their presentations, and all of you will be given a 10-minute time in order to ask your questions to the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilham Hussain. I really feel delighted to be a part of this multicultural conclave 2022 organized by ULAB. The title of my paper today is Dialogic Reading of African Literature in Bengali, an interpenetrative image of Africa in Bengali translation. Now, can I share my screen?
Yes, of course. I think everyone presenting have already been given the access.
Oh,
so
thank you very much.
Yes, so we can see your screen.
Thank you very much. I like to start my presentation with a quotation from Lawrence Venuti. Lawrence Venuti, in his book, Translators' Invisibility, claims that translation is a site where a cultural other is manifested. And Meneke Schipper's Dutch author, in her Imagining Insiders Africa and the Questions of Belonging, asserts there is always a difference between the people. There is always a difference between how people view themselves and their group and how they see others. So this very particular gap between how the people really are and how the readers or observers see them. So in this very particular gap, I think the translators have a very important or crucial duty to do, because translation is never political. Translation is never innocent, because translation has the power to manifest other, a cultural other. Now, what is the condition of Africa in our translation, that is translation in Bangla? Unfortunately, Africa, with all its diverse cultures, indigenous languages, wisdom, and epistemology, are still unable to draw considerable attention in our country. And in this vacuum, translators may work with a view to developing a dialogic relationship with Africa. The image of Africa, which is produced in translation, is usually interpenetrated and very often fragmented, because translation is a reconstruction of a world, quote, a world out of elements that are not only of another language, but also of another time, another place, an entirely other system of thought, unquote. That is, the source text has got a synchronic and diachronic location. And if the translation can appropriately determine this location, that is synchronic and diachronic location of the source text, then it's possible to minimize this gap between the culture represented in the source text and the culture reconstructed in the translated text or the target text. And as we know, that translation is always a reconstruction, a recreation. And for analyzing my views, I have borrowed the theoretical framework from Bakhtin's conception of dialogue. And Bakhtin, in his conception of dialogism, has said that every text is polyphonic. And it is the duty of the reader or the translator is to diagnose these polyphones or polyphonic characteristics of the text. And I like to read from this PowerPoint slide. Translation is to be a critical activity. So translation is to be very critically done. And it is a dialogue that challenges the impulse of narcissism by which every society and culture wants to be pure and unadulterated. So translation brings two cultures together on a singular platform and makes the reader see the source culture. So if the representation or reconstruction of the source culture is manipulated with the prejudice and narrowness of the translator, then that very representation of the source culture may be effective or adulterated or manipulated by the prejudice of the translator. So translator in this respect opens up the chance of cross-breeding and decentering. And as I have already told, that translation from Bakhtinian perspective is a dialogic process. It goes through dialogues, that is interactions and negotiations between two different cultures, two different languages, two different texts, two different authors, between author and the translator, between translator and the reader. So this negotiation is to be synchronized on the basis of very sound negotiation, very sound knowledge of the translator. Now, power of dialogic translation. So why should we emphasize the dialogic translation? Actually, translation possesses the power of knitting a geography as a nation because of its being an intercultural phenomenon. It invariably expands the scope of language and reframes the boundaries of signifiers and signifieds. And dialogism in translation ensures dialogues between two different languages, cultures, authors, author and translation, translator and readers, and thus in voice and tone, it becomes polyphonic and heteroglossia. And Bakhtin was in favor of heteroglossia, and he thought that the text is heteroglossic, and it is the duty of the reader is to discover this heteroglossic nature characteristic of the text. And Bakhtin, in his book, Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics, has very analytically showed that translinguistic framework of the text is to be explored. It is a site that is to be explored with care. And Bakhtin once said, "We are suffocating in the captivity of narrow and homogeneous interpretations." So homogeneous interpretations is a narrow interpretation, and dialogic approach opens up the ground for heterogeneous interpretation. Now, what challenges a translator face? Bakhtin says that in a text, the characters speak in their individual voices. So it is the duty of the reader or a man who is translating the text is to catch up all these distinct voices. If one voice is overlapped with another voice, that will give a wrong interpretation or wrong presentation of that very particular text. So in this respect, a translator's task is the task of a catalyst. If a translator is involved in his work of translation, and if his prejudice, if his personal attitude or subjectivity is involved in his translation, then it may construct a cultural other. That is, the culture that has been incorporated in the source text may be represented or may be constructed as a cultural other. So translation is to be reader-centered work that I think, and translation is known as a reader-centered work. I have quoted it. The most important task of a translator is to give his reader the same image and the same delight which the reading of the work in the original language would afford any reader educated in such a way that we call him, in better sense of word, the lover and the expert. That is, the translator's most crucial work is to represent the source culture, source text, with its exact flavor, exact color, and impression to the readers. So it's a difficult task, but he will have to take up this challenge. And while doing this job, a translator, if he is manipulated by his narrowness or cultural prejudice, then translation may be manipulated. And if the translator tries to impose his hegemonic temperament or disposition upon the translated text, that is target text, then the source culture may be transformed or may be represented as a cultural other. So in this way, we find that translation may be used as a tool or apparatus, hegemonic apparatus, that may misinterpret and misrepresent or malrepresent the people of the source text. Now I like to come to the condition of African literature in Bangla in our country.
Dear presenter, your time is already up.
Sir, may I have 1 minute, please?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. In our country, African literature is not widely translated in comparison with European literature or American literature, even in comparison with Latin American literature. So why? I think the colonial legacy, which is dormant in many of our minds, acts as a block to this kind of attitude towards African literature. And we know that the prize-winning writers get priority. The best-selling books get priority to the translators, because translators are to work being directed by the publishers, because it has been corporatized. And as we know that African literature does not get much priority, right, in this corporate framework of economy. In our country, African literature is not widely translated, but some translators are working here in our country. For example, Khalikujaman Ilyas, Kajol Bandyopadhyay, and Soed Shamsul Haq, our poet Asad Chaudhary, and many other translators have translated a huge quantity of African literature. But in comparison with other literature, especially in translation in Bangla, this is not very much significant. So I think all these things are to be addressed very critically, and then we can have a true test of African literature in our country in translation in our language. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilham Hussain, for your insightful presentation in regards to this topic. I would like to reiterate my request to everyone, especially the presenters, that please maintain the time so that we can conclude the presentations within the time limit set for this particular room. So Next, we have Neha Ghosh from University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh, whose presentation title is The East in the Bengal, the Influence of East Asian Popular Culture in Bangladeshi Manga.
Hello, everyone. So am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, Neha.
So I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes. So.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. My name is Neha Ghosh, and today I'm going to present my topic, which is the East in the Bengal, the influence of East Asian popular culture in Bangladeshi manga. In contemporary times, the popular culture of the world seems to be dominated by East Asia. From music, films, TV series to video games, cartoons, and comics, the wave seems to be everywhere. From this, the Japanese popular culture is flourishing gradually through manga and anime. So manga is actually known as the Japanese comics, and another popular culture which is now thriving is the Korean wave. Like K-pop and K-drama, Korean webtoon or digital Korean comics have also become a part of the new Korean wave content. So as the popularity is expanding, the boom can also be witnessed in Bangladesh through the growing fans. This indicates that there are fans who prefer these cultural expressions. Because of them, the culture is crossing the borders and influencing other culture. For example, because of their passion, the fans are creating fan works, and in this case, they're creating Bangladeshi manga in Bangla language. So the rationale behind my study is to explore the art styles and how exactly tradition and culture are embedded in East Asian contents, and to find the cause behind the influence in the Bangladeshi fans and how it's driving them to create Bangladeshi manga and the impacts and similarities. I'm implying that Bangladeshi manga creators are being influenced, but they're reshaping the very influence by incorporating their own folktales and traditions into their text to promote authentic Bengali culture and practice cultural preservation. To analyze this text, I'm using Laura Marx's concept of intercultural aesthetics to understand how culture cannot be confined in a box and how it can mediate in different directions. Chin and Morimoto's theory of transcultural fandom to show that fandoms are a reason for culture crossing the borders, and the concept of globalization to show how Bangladeshi animators are accepting the global and including local cultures. So the text I'm mainly analyzing are three Bangladeshi manga called Kinsakyong, Ramsagar, and Tanapuran. So Kinsakyong is a story between Arakanese princess and a Marma prince. It is based on the legend behind the name of the Bangladeshi river Kornofuli. The next is Ramsagar, which is based on the lake Ramsagar in Dinajpur, and Tanapuran is a tragic love story between a landlord's daughter and a weaver, and the setting is in the ancient Bengal. And to understand the influence, I have taken four Japanese manga, which are Naruto, Demon Slayer, Shirahime So, and Wishinbu, and Korean webtoons are Mystic Pop-Up Girl, Shaman Girl, Along with the Gods, and Bisan. So to understand the impact, first we need to know the characteristics and how the creators are incorporating the traditions and culture in this popular media, their art style and features, which makes them unique. So to start with Naruto, which revolves around a boy named Naruto who has a nine-tailed fox monster sealed inside him, is based on a mythological creature, and the author uses the creature to shape his personality. In Demon Slayer, the folktale of creature Oni or demon is used. The author also illustrates a specific era of Japan, which can be seen through the traditional Japanese dresses. And the manga, and this manga has a character called Shirahimesho, based on a folktale character called Yukionna, and the storyline also created in a folktale manner. And the last manga is Oishinbu, which purely focuses on food, gives heavy information about food with detailed drawing of cooking. This brings us to the unique art style and aesthetic features of manga. So their manga consists of monochrome art. The manga covers are colored. Characters have big eyes and line strokes as blush, which is a Japanese aesthetic feature. It is read from right to left, has 6 to 8 panels, and focuses on both art and dialogue, which makes it dialogue heavy. And another aesthetic decorative feature is the of a shoujo manga or girls manga is using long strands of hair to fill and flowers to fill the whole page. And this can be seen through this photo. Like manga, Korean webtoons also portray Korean traditional culture. In this webtoon, the foods are used to heal internal wounds. It has been observed that Korean people's characteristics are portrayed through their food, as they love mixing and harmonization. And this picture shows that the making of a Korean wrap step by step, which shows harmony and togetherness. And Korean shamanism is also depicted, which is a native religion of Korea. Speaking of shamans, the next webtoon also portrays a Korean shaman in a modern setting, and the Korean hell has been shown in this webtoon. The author also adds five colors known as the traditional Korean color spectrum called Obangsek, and this color spectrum is deeply ingrained in Korean culture, and it can be found in anywhere together, even in Korean food. And the last one is Bisan, which is based on a Korean folktale from Daegu city, and this shows how Korean webtoons also add their culture. So though the ones I've chosen have different art styles because of the artist preferences, most Korean webtoons have Japanese forms of characters designs such as big eyes and colored hairs and eyes, but the focus is more on art than dialogues. This brings us to their influence on Bangladeshi manga. So Bangladeshi manga characters for manga artists falls under the transcultural fandom, who has affinities towards this border crossing text. I'm going to first talk about the influence and similarities in their art style. So in Ramshakar, which is the first picture, and Kinsakang, which is the second picture, it can be seen that though these are Bangladeshi manga, they have colored hair and eyes, and the red blushing face is also present. The decorative element is also present, like hibiscus flowers and leaves are used as decorative purposes in the whole panel. The influence of Korean webtoon is also present here. An important aspect of the Korean wave is using vibrant colors. So like Korean webtoon, Bangladeshi manga is also colorful, unlike Japanese manga pages. As Danapuran is the newest manga, it embodies the Korean webtoons influence, such as having vibrant art and having fewer dialogues. So previously it has been discussed that the manga and webtoon have traditions and culture incorporated in them. Bangladeshi manga also does that by reshaping the influence. It can make people think that the influence also means including East Asian culture in Bangladeshi manga, but that is not the case. The artists are trying to repurpose the influence by portraying ancient Bengali culture, portraying culture and cultural diversity and cultural preservation. In this story, by including the Marma prince and the Arkanese princess, the manga creators are representing the indigenous people of Bangladesh. I have said before that it is based on a legend of the Kornofuli River. And it can be suggested that it is a rare legend because when we see Kornofuli, we do not think about Arakan being a part. And though the legend itself does not talk about Bangladesh and Myanmar together, the artists point out that they are not an allied force anymore. And it has been traced that for centuries, Buddhist Arkanis and Rohingya Muslims have been living together in the borders of Chattogram and Arakan state. It shows the past connection. So this manga was originally created in 2016, which also has a significance because Rohingya conflict intensified during that time. This shows the representation of the Rohingya issue. So the next story is also based on legend from Dinajpur. So, and the Hindu culture is represented here. The characters and customs that are shown here represent Hindu culture. So the portrayal of this religious minority culture is there also. And the last manga is Tanapuran, which is the original story set in ancient Bengal. I'm mainly focusing on how they have focused on our food like fish and rice to indicate the idea of Mache Bhate Bangali, which portrays the Bengali culture, and focus here is also on Hindu culture, which can be seen through the Hindu BA and the customs. And the illustrated characters here also look like South Asian people, as they have brown skin and black and brown hair. It shows how they are representing the cultural diversity, and by focusing on Bengali culture, they are practicing cultural preservation. So in conclusion, the influence of East Asian popular culture, specifically Japanese manga and Korean webtoon, is very much evident. It shows how they include their tradition and culture, and they have a distinct art style. The influence can be seen in Bangladeshi manga, but the artists are reshaping it by portraying their own culture. So it implies that they are preserving the culture and portraying cultural diversity. And so this is all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Neha Ghosh, for your wonderful presentation. Uh, I myself have an interest in reading mangas, and I actually didn't know that the Bengali or Bangladeshi mangas have been out for quite some time. So that does pique my interest to actually see how they have portrayed our folk stories through the representation of manga. So amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
So next we have Hanina Humayun from University of Central Punjab. The title of the presentation is The Narrativization of Bangladesh's Partition in the Pakistani movie Khel Khel Mein and the Urdu novel Dhaka Main Aunga, Dhaka I Will Come. So do we have Hanina Humayun here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible. So can you please share your screen?
You can see the video, right?
Yes, we can see the video.
Okay, so I did not prepare a presentation.
All right.
All the beautiful presentations that we've seen. Excuse me if mine is a little boring reading of the paper. The reason is that the movie that is, which I will analyze, has not been presented online. It's not available, and the novel does not have any interesting pictures that I could show. So if I may, can I start the reading of the paper that I wrote?
Yes, of course. So you have 10 minutes and you can start now. Thank you.
Okay. So the narrative around Bangladesh's independence from Pakistan is monolithic in the sense that seldom narratives of alterity, save the voices of a few academics, have existed. To Pakistani students, the first introduction to the circumstances was materialized into the events of 1971 comes from the syllabus of Pakistan studies taught from grade 8 in most schools. In the chapter regarding war, students learn that in 1971, Pakistan fought for the sovereignty and integrity of a united Muslim country. However, the spurious support of India towards the separatist movement in East Pakistan led to the country being divided into two. In a simplistic manner, the syllabus narrates that the causes for this tragedy were linguistic and cultural differences, but mostly it was all India's maneuver to harm Pakistan and destabilize it. The power dynamics of these differences, which elucidate West Pakistan's credence of cultural and racial superiority, are left out of the narrative entirely. And this has been Pakistan's official narrative since 1971. In November 2021, however, a big budget movie starring the country's two most high-profile actors claimed that it wanted to present a new narrative regarding Bangladesh's partition on the 50th anniversary of this event. The movie attracted a large audience in the theater, mostly because of the actors Sajal Ali and Bilal Abbas, and the current review of the movie are 92% on Google and 7.5 on IMDb, which represent its popularity with the audience. The content of the movie, which was consumed by the audience and liked by most of them, can be a cause of concern when one looks at its attempt at propagandizing an uncritical and highly biased narrative. The movie begins with the household of an army officer who has seen the atrocities in 1971 transpire before him, but who chooses to remain silent about it because he does not want to badmouth his Bengali brothers. His daughter, on the other hand, believes that what she has learned from her father must be told to people because it is important for the people of Pakistan to know who the real enemy was. Early on from the movie, a framework is laid to highlight the need and significance of the narrative which this movie is propagating. The need is that the same enemy is once again posing a threat to the stability and sovereignty of Pakistan. The significance is that this narrative, according to the movie, exposes the true and previously untold reasons to educate the audience so that they can be saved from the indoctrination of narratives that perpetuate the cause of those who wish to harm Pakistan. Similarly, the foreword of the novel Dhaka Main Aunga, which translates to Dhaka I Will Return, warns the readers that in lieu of the current circumstances where India continuously threatens to attack smaller fraction of the subcontinent, it has become instrumental that Pakistan makes its alliance stronger with Bangladesh. The author Parvaz notes that the problem of the current image of Bengalis being a nation that hold gratuitously grudges against Pakistan needs to be addressed. Such a foreword lays the foundation of a novel which conveniently obscures the reasons which built resentment among the people of East Pakistan, and by extension, it delegitimizes the atrocities which the army of West Pakistan conducted in East Pakistan, and before that, the economic and social exploitation that took place leading to the separatist movements. It further paints West Pakistan and its population as equal, if not more, victimized. He ends the forewords with a poetic verse that translates to: the aggrieved bosom would be united with the aggrieved bosoms of the God. What is baffling about this narrative, which the movie and novel in question propagate, is their insistence on presenting eye opening facts when in fact they present nothing that contradicts what is taught in the syllabus of Pakistan studies to all students. The focus on India being the sole instigator of the population of West Pakistan and its authorities as true well-wishers of Bengalis, and the need to reconcile with Bangladesh now to combat a mutual enemy present the same uncritical, unnuanced view of the events of 1971. In the book Paper Voices, it is explored that the subject of the content in the context to narrative creation by stating that quote, selectivity, emphasis, treatment, and presentation in the press interprets the process of social change, unquote. The movie Khel Khel Mein selectively focuses on the enemy as India, emphasizes India's current attempt to destabilize Pakistan, treats the partition of Bangladesh in a simplistic yet deceptive way, and present in a steep, aesthetically appealing manner to keep the audience hooked and entertained. Similarly, the novel Dhaka Mein Aunga selectively narrates the role of army in fighting in a selected few places and only combating the Indian army. It emphasizes the love and patriotism that the army of West Pakistan had for the Bengali brothers and vice versa. It treats the subject in an extremely monolithic way with a sentimental rhetoric by showing the devotion of a Bengali officer who chose to stay loyal to West Pakistan. Before dwelling further into the problematics of this narrative, it is pertinent to note here that the movie Javed Iqbal, a biopic based on a serial killer, was banned by the government due to its extremely crude narrative. However, the fact that a movie like Khel Khel Mein was allowed in theaters and attracted a large audience, most of which gave reviews in its favor, indicate that the acceptability of this narrative was presupposed in contrast to a movie with a controversial narrative such as that of Javed Iqbal. It also reveals that the way the events of 1971 have been presented in the movie are sanctioned by the state. In his work, Absence of the Present, the reburial of Adnan Mendes and the condition of possibility of public memory in Turkey, Matthew D. Tarr states that, quote, it is in the moment of representation of the past that the means of representing the past are produced. It is in this moment that the interests of the present are articulated, unquote. When we look at the absence of representation of the events of 1971 prior to its 50th anniversary, we can also observe the absence of the means of its production and its subsequent significance in the present. The significance of representing the events of 1971 in the present stem from the perceived political and social need by
I think she got disconnected. Okay, Hania Humayun has still not joined. So the next presenter for this particular room is Arfat Mohammad Noman, whose presentation title is Grieving Green, Evaluating Rampal Chundarban's Environmental Movement, Paripasu with Narmada Bachao Andolan. Is Arfat Mohammad Noman here? So we will wait 1 minute for the presenter to join. Okay, unfortunately, the presenter is not here. So we can move on to the question answer session that I had initially mentioned that we would be having at the very end of the presentations. So we have one question in the chat box. Let me read it out. So we have one question from Arifa Ghani Rahman ma'am to Mr. Elham Hussain. Why do you think it's important to translate African literature for a Bangladeshi audience? Is it only because it is underrepresented?
Sir, thank you very much for the question. Would you please repeat the question, please?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's there in the chat. Why do you think it's important to translate African literature for a Bangladeshi audience? Is it only because it is underrepresented?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very nice question. Actually, our experience, especially colonial experience and the colonial experience of the Africans, are almost same, though the historical backgrounds are different. But we were exploited by the European colonizers for nearly 200 years. East India Company came here and exploited us, and African Company also exploited the Africans. And we know that the birthplace of Homo sapiens is Africa. And if we want to know the anthropological background of human beings and civilization, we have to go back to Africa. But Africa was kept out of discussion, out of the narratives of the world because of Western politics. And now in post-colonial realities, we understand the importance of Africa regarding its cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, its importance in the world economy regarding its natural and human resources. So I think the study of African literature side by side with the European literature, American literature, and other literatures is very essential in our country. But the regretful matter is that in our country, African literature is not widely translated. So it is most probably because of the corporatization of our economy, corporatization of power structure also. I think this is the cause of our not sufficient attention to African literature, study of African literature. Even if you think of the curriculum of the comparative literature department, you will find that African literature is not receiving sufficient attention there. It is to some extent marginalized. So why does this happen? This is not, it should be thought of politically. It should be thought of from different perspectives. So I think this is the time in post-colonial situation to think of African literature and the study of African literature in our country. That will contribute to our cross-cultural development and multicultural development. We are living in multicultural atmosphere, multicultural world. So I think Africa is to be studied side by side extensively with other literatures of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that very comprehensive answer. I wasn't expecting such a detailed answer, but thank you so much for that. I'm just curious, like a follow-up sort of question. I know I'm kind of taking over, but I'm wondering, does it work both ways? Like, we want to bring in African literature into our curriculum, and because we are interested to learn more about them and develop this sort of multicultural atmosphere around us. But what about our literature? Would you, what do you think, what is your view about having our literature translated for the world at large, and also, for those people who may not know so much about us? What is your view on that?
Yes, actually, once I met one of my African friends and asked him, is Bengali literature in your translation available in African literature, African universities? Or do you read our Bengali literature in the translation of your language? Do you read our literature there? And he answered, no, we do not read your literature in Africa. So this is really shocking for me, shocking discovery. Actually, I think the negotiation or cultural dialogues between two different countries are to be initiated and increased. And if cultural negotiations, cultural dialogues are possible between two different countries, two different continents, that is South Asia and Africa, then I think there will be a very congenial atmosphere for the flourishment of our literature and African literature in two different continents, and that will pave the way for multicultural atmosphere. Actually, this initiative should be taken from different institutions, because we are living in a power structure. So if the power structure shows interest in it, then I think this problem will be solved very soon. From our individual side, we are trying to negotiate with our African friends. Suppose I have some African friends and I communicate with them, I try to listen to them. They are also interested to listen to me. In this way, we have developed a cultural negotiation. But I think this attempt is to be taken, or this initiative is to be taken from institutionally, from some big platforms, suppose university, and from the part of our government also. Our education system is to show interest in the study of multiculturalism or transculturalism. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the problem here is that we are also focused on trying to, get our message across to the West.
Yeah.
That we sort of ignore these other relationships that we could possibly build up as
Yes.
well. So yeah, thank you so much for that perspective.
Thank you, madam.
So do we have any more questions for our participants?
Maybe Nahian, you have some question for Neha about her manga and your interest.
Actually, I would like to know when were these mangas published? I haven't actually seen them.
Sir, the Bangladeshi mangas?
Yes.
So there is a website called Manga Stage,
Okay.
and they are created by two sisters actually. They are now studying in Dhaka University. They're like, they also make manga. So I'm like, they're called Shantana Shantuma together. So they also make that
Okay.
make that website specifically for Bangladeshi manga in Bangla language. So where in that website you can find those mangas.
Okay. Could you please share the link here in the chat box so that we would be able to check it out? But
Yes,
that was
sir.
a very
Sure.
interesting topic that you had selected for the presentation. And I personally think that we do have a popular culture fan following growing in Bangladesh, especially in related to the Japanese and the Korean culture. And we often see K-pop celebrations or K-pop exhibitions or Korean cultural exhibitions pop up in different parts of the city. So something that is related to the Japanese manga culture is actually quite interesting to see and observe.
Yes, sir.
So,
Sir, I have shared the link.
thank you very much, Neha.
Thank you, sir.
And Nahian, Hania
Yes.
Humayun is here.
Yes, I was actually just about to say that, ma'am. Yes, Hania Humayun, are you here?
Yes, I don't know what happened. I had to restart. I don't even know at what point I was cut off.
You were actually were logged out, I think. So do you would you want to like finish the presentation?
I think we have
If I
time.
do have time.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think we do have time.
some.
You can, I think, do the whole presentation
Sure.
again if you want.
Okay, that's perfect.
Right.
Okay, just a minute. I'll open it again. I think I'll skip the introduction and I'll start with the analysis. So we have more time. Okay. So the book Paper Voices explores the subjects of the content in context to narrative creation by stating that quote, selectivity, emphasis, treatment, and presentation in the press interprets the process of social change. The movie Kill Kill Me selectively focuses on the enemy as India emphasizes India's current attempts to destabilize Pakistan, treats the partition of Bangladesh in a simplistic yet deceptive way, and presents in an aesthetically appealing manner to keep the audience hooked and intrigued. Similarly, the novel Dhaka Mein Aunga selectively narrates the role of army fighting in a selected few places and only combating the Indian army. It emphasizes the love and patriotism in that the army of West Pakistan had for their Bengali brothers and vice versa. It treats the subject in an extremely monolithic way, and finally, it presents the subject matter by using intensively emotional language and sentimental rhetoric by showing the devotion of a Bengali army officer who chose to stay loyal to West Pakistan. Before dwelling further into the problematics of this narrative, it is pertinent to note here that the movie Javed Iqbal, a biopic based on a serial killer, was banned by the government due to its extremely crude narrative. However, the fact that a movie like Khel Khel Mein was allowed in theaters and attracted a large audience, most of which gave reviews in its favors, indicated that the acceptability of this narrative was presupposed in contrast to a movie with controversial narratives such as Javed Iqbal. It also reveals that the way the events of 1971 have been presented in the movie are sanctioned by the state. In his work, Absence of the Present, the reburial of Adnan Mendes and the condition of possibility of public memory in Turkey, Matthew D. Tarr states that, quote, it is in the moment of representation of the past that the means of representing the past are produced. It is in this moment that the interests of the present are articulated, unquote. When we look at the absence of representation of the events of 1971 prior to its 50th anniversary, we can also observe the absence of the means of its production and its subsequent significance in the present. The significance of representing the events of 1971 in the present, stemming from the perceived political and social need by those in power to dictate and determine narratives, influences the representation and determines the means of its production. Similarly, its absence in the past is congruent to the absence of equality in representation and resources of East Pakistan when Bangladesh had not been freed. Here, mediums like film and novel play a vital role in aligning the official narrative with the public and popular narrative. When only one type of narrative is allowed by the state to reach the audience and others do not enter the realm of public consumption of content, we can identify the means of representation being institutionalized and restricted. While the movie Khel Khel Mein begins with the promise that it was tried to change the narrative, the audience is subjected to the same institutionalized narrative of the past with the change that in the movie it is presented with a very appealing and convincing aesthetic and rhetoric which would overwhelm the audience. In the first half an hour, the female lead is shown to deliver a highly sentimental speech amidst tears about how India divided two loving brothers. She narrates how people of West Pakistan and East Pakistan never had any differences between them about the unequal distribution of resources. The irony of this scene is that while she paints a picture of a perfectly harmonious country whose two wings were extremely intimate, the other students of her university stand clueless, hearing about this intimacy for the very first times in their lives because their ancestors had never narrated any tale of their intimacy or even ties with the population of East Pakistan. In Dhaka Mein Aunga, the story does underscore the problem of distance, which made it difficult for people on opposite sides to be intimate. The author very cleverly uses it to his advantage of the narrative, articulating this as the basis for misunderstandings about each other, which distance exacerbated, but which were completely unfounded. In the novel, the protagonist, Mushaffaq Rahman, joins the battalion in West Pakistan where army officers hint to him about the reservations that soldiers of East Pakistan have with Western Pakistan, and the protagonist takes this as an opportunity to narrate that this supposed conception of West Pakistan looking down upon Bengalis and Bengalis in turn being hostile against Bengalis in turn hosting hostility against West Pakistan are all rumors fueled by the distance. The role of army in both the movie and the novel adhere to D. Tarr's proposition of army as the defense of not just territorial boundaries, but boundaries of morals and prejudices. In the movie, it is revealed that it was not the Pakistani army who was implicated in violence, but the common people who had been brainwashed by Mukti Bahini. In the novel too, the army is shown to fight only in certain areas where defense was needed against the military actions being conducted by India. The army in this narrative never commits any wrong, instead it is heartbroken at the partition. Hafsa Umar, in her thesis titled Wishes and Embodied Imaginations, Martial Masculinities, Pakistani Army and Sexual Violence in 1971, has presented evidence of the rapes conducted at a mass level by the Army of West Pakistan in the then East Pakistan. Several other researchers have documented various other forms of violences as well. The reformulation of the two-nation theory as two-cultural theory by Lieutenant Colonel Mazhar Ali to otherize the Bengali culture and Ayub Khan's speeches demonizing Bengalis are also documented and recorded. However, these facts are completely obfuscated in the current representation of Bangladesh's independence. The narrative exonerates the blame of any prejudice, exploitation, and atrocity from those who abuse their power to commit well-documented atrocities in the then East Pakistan. On the contrary, they reverse the blame on citizens of East Pakistan by assigning them the role of traitors who did not trust and remain faithful to the state of Pakistan and instead blindly believe what narrative India tried to inculcate in them. In the movie, the protagonist Sara visits the area in Bangladesh where Pakistanis who are stranded in Bangladesh currently live. The poor conditions of the art area and the despondency of its residents convey the injustice conducted by the authorities in Bangladesh on people of West Pakistan without representing the atrocities committed by the latter. In the novel too, the people in Bangladesh who support a united Pakistan are shown to endure violence. The character of Charna, who is a Hindu Bengali, is presented as an evil lady who cannot see anyone happy, in contrast to Mushafiq's love interest in Lahore, the ideal pious patriotic Maya. The narrative further embeds the society with a self-righteousness instead of making it critical of its wrong. In the closing scene of Khel Khel Mein, Sara and her teammates present a play which presents how India split two lovers. In her closing speech, she asked the audience at Dhaka National University that they, the people of West Pakistan and the people of Bangladesh, should forgive each other now. This implicates that the people of East Pakistan as preparators of violence against West Pakistan and that Bangladesh owes an apology to Pakistan for its betrayal. This also placates the supposed resentment among Pakistanis against people of Bangladesh by acknowledging that they did indeed act as traitors. For that reason, the biases against Bangladesh are justified. However, Pakistan is now generously allowing Bangladeshis to redeem themselves by benevolently offering to forgive them for their betrayal. D. Tar has argued, quote, representation of the past in the present memory work is complicit in constituting a set of concepts that also produce the meaning of the past, unquote. This production of a public memory through Khel Khel Mein and Dhaka Mein Aunga produced meaning surrounding the events of 1971 to construct the public memory in Pakistan, which narrativizes Bangladesh as a country gullible to India's rhetorical manipulation. It further invalidates the accounts of victims who have suffered in the hands of Pakistani army. Having emphasized India's role in independence of Bangladesh and exonerating Pakistan's role entirely, this narrative silences even the absences of Pakistan's complicity in the events transpiring into Bangladesh's independence. Having represented the past in this manner, we can conclude that the official memory has attempted to manufacture the public memory for laying grounds for a geopolitical alliance which would be in Pakistan's benefit. And once again, if people of Bangladesh do not reciprocate on the basis of this memory created about 1971, Pakistan would again be justified in deepening the resentments against the people of Bangladesh, this time for the lack of compassion and the refusal to accept the chance of mutual forgiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hania Humayun. Do we have any questions for Hania's presentation? Just to let everyone know again that she did not use any slides to do her presentation. So we don't have any questions for Hania Humayun. With that, I would like to conclude the session for this particular room.